Hi, and welcome back to another tutorial. We're working with Spring Boot, and in this tutorial we're going to create a single-page app using JavaScript. So in this course we are learning how to build web apps, so a full-stack application with a Java Spring framework. Here's the index of everything that you're going to learn in this course. So we've done several items already, and we are on item 4, which is talking directly to a database. So in the future, we're going to work with MongoDB and do some authentication and also microservices. So stick around for the upcoming lessons. In this video, I would like you to review what we've already built and then focus in on the part that is important here. So at the top of an application, we have the front end, the user interface, which performs requests and expects responses from the server. So we're going to have several layers that we've built already, and at the bottom we have a database. So the request goes down the stack and then eventually comes back up. So which part are we focusing in on this lesson? Well, we're at the top here. So we are talking about the controller, which is a REST controller in this case, and then a front end, which is built in a HTML and JavaScript combination. So what's new? What are you going to see here in this lesson that you haven't seen yet before? So we are going to create this app here, which is a single page application. You can see from the browser URL that SPA is the new extension, and the formatting that you see here is all HTML and JavaScript. Now the key difference here is not so much of what the page looks like, but how the server acts. So let's contrast a traditional web app to a single page app. So this is what a traditional cycle looks like. A client types in a browser request, such as site.com. That request is sent to the server as the form of a GET request. So the controller at the server is programmed to respond and produces a string, an HTML string, which is sent back to the browser. And so Chrome, or whatever browser you have, is programmed to correctly parse that data and the CSS and display it on the page. So in this case, as you can see, it's a data entry form. And so the user types in a keyword such as free. Now in that HTML code is the required response for the next event. So you can see that form has an action called search, and it is of type post. So when you click that submit button, it sends back another request to the server. So that request is a post request, and it probably has some data associated with it, such as the keyword free that we're looking for. Now, what's the server's job? His job is to go ahead and query the database, find everything that relates to free, render another page, and send back a string. So that string is in format of HTML and maybe some CSS to go along with it. Of course, there are images and JavaScript that can all be bundled together, but each item is really a form of an HTML code. So when we're done, the browser then takes all that data that is sent from the server and renders it to the screen according to the standards of HTML. So that is the standard way that a web app works. Now I want you to notice that in this case there are two blue arrows. So it takes two requests to fulfill the requirements of the app. So the browser essentially restarts those two occasions. So the first time it has to redraw the entire page to create your data entry form. The second request is redrawn again from scratch, reloading the web browser page from the second results. Now, what would we like to do though? We would like to treat this as a partial page update, and that's where the idea of a single page app comes from, or an SPA. So let's look at the cycle again and see how that works. So the client has to produce another request, so it's a GET request that comes from the web browser. The server responds probably in the same way as the first time. It says, here is a form, and it's in HTML code. So you have to have at least one request and draw the entire page. Now, notice differences here though. So in the action of the form, I left it blank. There is no form action now. So if you click submit and there's no JavaScript code to go with that, nothing happens. However, we include something to respond to that submit button. It's no longer a onSubmit action, it's more of an onClick action. And the JavaScript is going to have some things to do with this now. So in this tutorial that we're going to do, we're going to use Ajax, and it's going to have a request such as post. And it's going to expect a response and handle that response without refreshing the page. So the client then sends a post. Notice it's different though. It's not just a form submit. It is now called an Ajax submit or an Ajax post method. So the server is probably going to do about as much work as it did before. It's going to generate a response. This time, however, the response is not a complete page. It's going to format just the data that the page needs. So this data is frequently done in JSON format. So JavaScript object notation is JSON. So that's what it looks like. Now it sends it back, and then the client is supposed to parse that data. Its job is not over. It doesn't just render whatever comes from the server. It has to go through and cycle through like a big for loop to say how many objects are in this JSON request. And that is the response item in the method that is in our JavaScript. So that response then can either refresh the entire page, remove an item from the page, or add a few items. The end result looks the same to the user. We're still going to get a list of results. However, the amount of time and the work that the browser does appears to be less to the user. It's much more immediate. So a partial page update only updates the piece of the page that is new. Now, the client's job is kind of the complex part here. So if you're a front-end web developer, this is your specialty. You learn how to parse these JSON feeds. So look at this data again. So we have two objects here that are search results, essentially. So that JSON text has to be sent to JavaScript programs. Now this here is a piece of code from jQuery, and you can see that the top line is Ajax. It tells it we're going to do a put action, which is like an update action, and you can see some other items here that we have to format, and we have to expect the data. We can log it. We can update the pieces of a web page. So that's the point of our tutorial that we're about to begin with, is we are going to code this JavaScript and we are going to respond to a REST API. So that's what's ahead. Now the JavaScript clients that you can pick from are many. So jQuery is kind of the grandfather of this group. It's probably the simplest one to see for the first time if you're new to this kind of programming. And so that's the one I'm going to pick because literally it's going to be one page of code. Now, far more popular and probably more employable are the rest of these. So React, I think right now, is the leader as far as popularity. And then Vue and Angular are also good choices. So all of these frameworks then are JavaScript code, and they run on the client. And their job is to parse the JSON data that is sent to them and correctly render it to the screen. So there are advantages to each of those, and those are subjects for other tutorials. So check out the notes in the links below on this video if you would like to see courses on React in the others. But right now we're going to move on to an application that we write in jQuery. So here's the ingredients of what we need to accomplish our recipe today. So first of all, we need to have a REST API in place, which is going to provide us with that JSON data. Now we've built that in previous lessons. So go back and look at the previous lessons on building a REST API if you haven't seen that yet. In the green box on the right here, this is the new stuff. We are going to be creating the front end, which will parse and properly display this data. So just ahead of us is a single page app with Spring and JavaScript. Okay, now before we start the code, let's do a live demonstration of what we're going to see when we're finished here. So you can see that I have a page called SPA. And when I have a search term filled out, such as this one, I click the letter A and I get all the results that have the letter A in it. If I try a different letter, such as B, I get some different results. Now at the bottom here, you can see that I have edit and delete. So let's choose edit. We got an edit form that fills out and I can change some details. And when I click OK and search, I can see now the details have been updated. So that's where we're going. That's the app that we're going to build. And all of this is a single page application. So let's get started with making a new version of our project and adding some code. So this is the text editor, and I'm going to copy the last project that we built and make a copy of it. So let's copy and choose Control V for paste, and let's do some renaming. Now the first item that I'm going to rename is the class called Topic43 application. We'll change that to Topic44 application and let the refactoring do its job. The second idea is in the POM file, so POM XML, and we open this up and change 4.3 to 4.4 in two different locations and save the changes. Now we're ready to begin adding some new code to this version of the project. So most of the work that we're going to do here is going to be in the templates area. So let's open up the templates folder, right click and choose a new item. We'll create a new HTML page and we'll call this page as orders spa.html. So this page here will do all of the work in this tutorial. Now to make this go quickly, I'm going to provide you with the source code because in this tutorial the focus is on Spring Boot and not so much on JavaScript. But this will get you started. So I'm pasting in a bunch of code, and let's go look at the top of the page and go through each item so you understand what you just put in here. So at the top of the page, first of all, you can see three important links. So these links here refer to both a style sheet and some JavaScript code. So the first link here on the page is out to a Bootstrap link from a content delivery network, CDN, and you can see that I am using Bootstrap. The second item here is a link to jQuery. So jQuery is the program framework that we're going to work with to make this page responsive. And so we don't have to actually install anything, we just have to have this link. So we can add that one there. The third item is our own custom CSS. So you can see that this is pointing to a folder on my server now. So we're going to have to create a CSS file to get all that blue and gray that you just saw a minute ago. So the first part of the page is about linking in our resources such as CSS and jQuery. Now just to remind ourselves of what we are actually coding, I'm going to bring back the actual active page. So you can see the top of the page is a search headline and then a form. So let's see if we can find that on our page here. So we have the first section, it's a container type. We've got an entry form. And then after that, we get some hidden code. So this here is called the entry form for editing each item. So that will not display to begin with. The JavaScript will hide that. Then we have this section in here called results box. Now you notice that there are no results here. It's completely empty. So this section, this div, is going to be replaced using jQuery. So the dynamic part of this page occurs on this line right here. This part will be replaced. If there are 10 items or 100 items or 0, this will grow and shrink dynamically. Finally, we have another link at the bottom of the page to load up our JavaScript here. So this custom file, site.js, is also something that we're going to have to put into our app. The next item we can address is the custom CSS for this page. So let's go and add an item here in the static folder. So we'll call this file spa.css. So this refers to specifically one page. I'm going to give you the code here again so we can get on with the programming. So pasting in here, you can see the final link at the bottom where I got the color scheme from. I'm not a professional designer, so I'm using somebody else's tools to give me suggestions. So this here will make everything look pretty, have the rounded rectangles and all the rest of it. So the first thing we're going to do in this JavaScript is create a ready action. So we have to make sure that the whole page is loaded. So I'm pasting in some code here that is the starter code for most jQuery projects. So it says wait for the document to be ready and then we will run a function. So the function here is only to print something to the console to see that it actually indeed is working. So far this page, it has three components. You can see the JavaScript part here. We pasted in this HTML code, which now refers to the JavaScript, and we've also created the CSS file. So we need to have all of these combined together to create a page, and our controller needs to call that. So I don't know if we've had that action in the controller or not, so let's go check it out. So let's open up the folder for our controllers and look for the orders controller. Now, what I need to find is a get mapping that will show the SPA. So I scroll down, and I believe I do not have one yet. So we are going to have to add one. So the closest example here I have for code that I can copy is this item here called search or show the search form. So I'm going to press Control-C to copy that, and we'll put this at the bottom of the page and change it to be showing the SPA form. Now this is really a simplified version of this, so we can delete a lot of these things. First of all, the GET request has to be for SPA. Then we're going to name this thing as something like show SPA page. And finally, we're just going to return the HTML that we generated a minute ago called orders SPA using capital letters. So now the controller should be able to display the page that we just generated, and we should see something on the screen, even if it might not work totally correctly yet. Let's run it and find out. So let's go to the project name, do a right click, choose Run as a Spring Boot app, and let the computer compile the code. So I'm switching back into the browser, and this should look familiar. We have the orders page here. Now I'm adding a new item, so I'm typing in SPA at the end and pressing enter. And this time we get the page that is the single page application results. So a couple of things you notice right away is the color scheme. We have a custom CSS. We have this search form here, and we have an edit terms, and nothing as far as search results go yet. Let's do another check. I'm going to right click and choose inspect. So this is in Chrome. The controls for inspecting are a little bit different when you come to Firefox. Now, choosing inspect allows you to see all the code that is HTML and CSS. And I'm interested in the console because of this message here called ready. So when I refresh the page, you can see that the ready message pops up because of site.js line 4 that generated this thing. So this message here is telling me that jQuery is loaded and ready to run. Now we can add some more items to make this responsive. So let's switch back into our JavaScript code, and we're going to add another item after the ready function. So what I'm looking for is a command that will hide the edit form. And so using jQuery, I say give me the ID of entry form.hide, and this will now hide the entire section when the page loads. So I'm going to save this and go back and check it out. So if I refresh the page, this time you can see that the edit form is now invisible thanks to the program that we just wrote. Next, I want to add an event handler for the search button. So when they click on search, what happens? It runs a function. You can see that the code here says go ahead and hide the entry form, and then we're going to create a new variable called search term, and we'll save it in a var. Now, the first time I run this, I want to check to see if we actually captured that value. So let's go and console log it, and let's see if this works. So I'm going to come back to my page and refresh it, so that'll reload all the items. And I've got the letter A in here for the search term, and click search. And over here it does say you searched for A. So if I type in a longer string, the next item says you searched for that string. So it does appear that it is capturing the value of this input form, and jQuery is now able to echo it out back to the console. All right, so now let's get into the next item, which is actually the event that this thing is supposed to do. So we're supposed to get some search results from our app. So I'm pasting in some more code, of course, and you can see that we're running an Ajax query. So there's a couple of components that you can put in with an Ajax query. First of all, you're going to have a URL. Notice the URL name here is for our local host and the port number. And then I'm calling upon our API orders REST API with a search. And then I add the search term to the end of it. So this here is relying on the program that we coded in a tutorial several videos ago. Another important part is the success. So the result that comes back is in this variable called result. And so we're just going to echo it to the screen using the console log. Okay, it looks like I need to balance out all of my curly brackets, so that way this one matches with that one, and it looks like a parentheses. So this is tricky when you're trying to do all of these nested different brackets. Let's see, indenting looks better there, and maybe a semicolon. Now I just want to bring back to your memory something that we did earlier. We worked with Postman, so if I wanted to do a search orders, we had an item for that. So searching, for example, ST, and we choose a send, we are expecting to get data that looks like this. So Postman is able to talk to the REST API here. Now our jQuery app should be able to do the same thing. So let's switch back into our web page, and I'll just stick with the letter A and choose search. And I did get something here. It says you searched for A, and then the console results show a bunch of nested items. So you can see that these items are the same kind of data that we got from Postman. So that request is getting successful data. Okay, so now I want to do something more than just respond it with a console log. So I'm going to paste in some more code. Now, what is this? What I want to do is concatenate a whole bunch of things into one string. And this is kind of a crude way to do it, but you can see the results pretty easily. So I'm making a variable called output HTML, and it starts as an empty string. And then it runs through a for loop, and it says, give me one item called for each item in the results. So X is the counter. Now I'm going to say that each item in this list is an order. So the order can be built by creating a bunch of list items. And so when we're all done here, we will have a long string called output HTML. Finally, to check this out, let's go ahead and just post this into the console as well, and we might see some HTML if we're lucky. So let's come back into our browser and push refresh to get a new version and choose search. So you can see the results now are both the JSON formatted data and then a whole bunch of HTML. Now, if you trust me, this HTML will generate something that is supposed to be on the form. We just need to tell it where to go. So instead of doing console log, I'm going to delete that and paste in some more items. So what I want to do is target the region with the ID of results box. So that is one specific div on the page. And I'm going to replace its HTML contents with this string called output HTML. Let's take a quick look at the HTML page again, and notice at the bottom of this page there was a div. This div right here called results box. This is where the data is going to be inserted. Let's see if that actually works. So let's switch back into the browser and refresh. And this time when I choose search, you can see that all of the results are now generated and inserted into this area. So you can see I have 5 results in my JSON data, and it looks like I have 5 boxes here. So let's try a different search. I think ST is what I showed you from Postman, and ST does have 2 results just like we saw earlier. So that's part of our goal here. We've got ourselves a search term that seems to be working. Now the edit and delete buttons, they have to be done next. All right, I'm going to return back into the JavaScript, and after we got the first search results working, I'm going to add a new function. Now I want to hide this Ajax for a little while because I'm not going to mess that up. I want to just collapse it. So you can see that the items from line 18 to 49 are now invisible. So I'll put some new space below that. Oops, go ahead and hide again. Thank you. And this time I'm going to paste in some new code that is going to be another click event. Okay, so now this event here is going to be targeting all of the buttons that have the word edit on them. So the document on click method will target anything on the page that has the class of edit button. So edit button is a class that I put into the code specifically so that we can have this event handler. Now I'm going to get the value of this button, and let's go ahead and console log it so that way we can see which button we clicked and see if we're getting some valid results. So let's save this and refresh the page. So I'm going to refresh the page again and get some search results up. So I'm going to click the edit button, and you can see that it says here a 1. Let's click the next one and it says a 3, and edit gets us 9. So it appears that the ID value of the item that we clicked is being recorded here as its edit button. So let's see where that magic came from. So I'm going to come back into my code and expand the Ajax, and let's see what was going on that gave us those magic numbers. So if I go down to the edit button here, you can see that we have a button number, and then the value that I associated it with is from the order.id. So I said give this button a value and make it the same as the order number. That's why that function is able to respond to the correct button. All right, now we need to go back and add some more actions. So when this button is clicked, we need to go get some data and put it back into the entry form. So I'm going to paste in some code here, and you can see that it's an Ajax request. It says go get the item for this ID number. And let's go ahead and log the results just to test it out. And then I want to fill in the entry form, which is going to have a bunch of values, and we need to associate those values with the items that come back from our REST service. So go through line by line to see that we indeed are filling in the form. Then the last item on the list says, go ahead and show the form, and I'm using the number 500 to make it kind of gradually fade in. So that'll be 500 milliseconds and give us some animation. Okay, so before we go and try anything, let's go make sure all the brackets are well balanced. So we've got parentheses and curly brackets, and let's see if we can make this work on the web page. Okay, so I'm back to the page here. Let's go ahead and do a search, and let's click an edit button. So it does fill in the edit form. You notice I've got all the same values here that came from this record number 3. So if I click a different one, you can see I've got different values. Now I need an OK button to be able to save that back into the database. So let's do a click event on that button. All right, so back into our original JavaScript, let's go ahead and collapse an item, and let's put some new space in. And I'm going to put in another click event. So this one is supposed to respond to anything that has the form OK ID. So that is the edit form. Now we're going to generate a new object which will get all of its values from the input form. So each string gets saved here in this thing called object. Now I have to stringify it so that way this object becomes a JSON object. So automatically JavaScript knows how to do that. You give it a class and you say stringify it, and it turns it magically into all the correct parentheses and curly brackets. So it's amazing, it does all that work for you. Then I'm going to console log it so that way we can see what the message is. And then I'm going to once again call the server. So call in another Ajax to say, go get me an update command, and the ID that I'm looking for is this object.id. Now the data has to come from some location. Where does this body actually work? So a key line here is that this variable called JSON string is being sent in this section. So when we put literally a put request out to the server, the data has to be here. So it's the big JSON formatted string that the server is going to ingest and then process for us. When we get a success, we should have nothing to report, and we'll just redisplay the page. So I'm going to say hide the entry form, don't need to see that anymore. And then the search results we're going to also empty out, so that way we have a new form to try again. So let's save this and give it a test. So let's go back and refresh the page. Let's go ahead and choose search. I'm going to edit the first item, and let's change the quantity to some big numbers so we can remember it. So there's a bunch of 9s. We click OK. Search again, and this time you can see that the results did show the change has been affected. The last item we have to do is this delete button to see if we can make that work. Okay, finally the delete button we're going to put at the bottom of the page, so let's create some space again, and I'm going to give you the code in one big chunk. So this says, go ahead and look on the document to see if there's any item that is called a delete button. If you get a click on that button, then do this result. So we're going to console log it again so I make sure I know which button I've clicked, and then the Ajax request. So this time the type is delete. The URL tells me that which number is going to be deleted is found right here, and so orders / some number with the function called the data type called delete. So I believe that this is different than the way I coded the REST API earlier. So this might not work. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure it won't work, but we can at least test it and then fix the error once we figure out what's going on. So we're supposed to get some results logged back and then reset the page. So let's go ahead and save this and try again. So I'm going to refresh the page, search for somebody, and let's pick someone to delete, such as the Easy Diet Pill. I'll choose delete. Now, I told you that something's not going to work, and you can see it on the console over here. It says delete is a 405 error. So there was no such thing in my controller to handle this event. So if you got any errors in the console log here, that's telling you that something didn't work in the back end. So let's go see what the controller is up to and why it didn't accept this. So I want to get back into the controller, so I'm searching for the orders REST controller, which is what we've been hitting this whole time. And there is something on here about deleting, I believe. So let's see, where is it? So originally, I planned to do a GET request to do the delete. In the case that I programmed in JavaScript, it's a little bit different. So instead of GET mapping, we're using delete mapping. So to make this work, let's change from get mapping to delete mapping. And in the URL, we don't need to have the word delete anymore. We can just do a /ID number. Everything else stays the same, and we'll call the delete one function, and hopefully we'll get ourselves the same results. Now if I come back to here and refresh, we should be able to delete this time. So let's go ahead and search, and let's get rid of the easy diet pill. So I'll push delete, and it says we have a result called true, which I believe means a success. So if I do a search, and now easy diet pills are gone. So we got 5 results on the first search, and now we have 4 left. So it appears that the delete function was successful. Now we're going to move on and do some more greater and bigger things here. We're going to work with a Mongo database and have logins with security and even work with microservices. So more to come. Let's go on to the next part as you continue to learn Spring Boot.